I have worked in social services for 36 years now in the old person sector in Portsmouth. I started as a home help and worked for 9 years in Gosport. So I started working with people in their own homes then. And then I worked for a year in a day centre, so saw people in group settings as well. Then in 1989 I started in Portsmouth as a social work assistant, which was an unqualified social worker then. And then in 1993 I went to university as a mature student to qualify as a social worker. I became a high-grade social worker in 2000. I've also been a practice teacher social worker, so I've had student social workers with me for the last 12 years. I became involved with carers in 1989. The first 2 or 3 months of my job, I was meeting people who were looking after husbands, wives, or elderly relatives. And it just seemed that the same thing was coming over to me all the time, that they were saying they felt as though they were the only person in that situation and they felt isolated, families back off, they don't want to know, that sort of thing. And I kept saying to my manager, it would be lovely if these people could just meet each other, just to share their information. So I set up a carer support group in November the 17th, 1989, and we ran for 25 years. And I can say that the majority of my information and knowledge that I've got about carers is from carers themselves, because you're the experts, not us that stand here with a hat on. And to meet those people for 1 hour every week, we shared information, we had lots of laughs, we had lots of tears as well, but everybody learned from everybody else. What Brian's been saying, obviously I've been through lots and lots of changes with adult social care. When I started in 1989, the people that lived at home had 3 choices: home help, meals on wheels, or a day centre. There was nothing else, and we only did services Monday to Friday. And I didn't know anything about informal carers then, and if people lived on their own, they got more support than if there was other people around. In 1993, because we had the NHS and Community Care Act, which changed everything then. Prior to that, if somebody had wanted to go into a home for whatever reason, we just filled an income support form, which is long since gone, and off they went. We could take them round to look at several homes, and all the homes would accept the income support benefit because the government was paying for it, so they just took it. So in those 1990 to 93, a lot of people went into residential care that didn't actually need it. If they couldn't wash and dress themselves every day, they needed to go into care. That's what they were told, not by social work. And then so they went. So after 1993, because social services then had the funding, we then had a criteria that people had to meet criteria to go into care. So it obviously made it much more stricter. And when I started then, we had about 120 homes in the city. We've now probably got about 30, because the people that go into care now are usually people with dementia. People with just physical disabilities usually do manage to stay at home with community care, with paid agency carers going in. And just taking the point about the carers allowance, which we have campaigned for in Carers UK, there are over 6.5 million carers in the country, and if you care more than 24 hours a day, it works out at about 20p an hour. So the minimum wage is laughable, really. And when I started, I think the carers allowance was about £45, so gradually it has gone up, but it is ludicrous. And you could have a lady at 59 getting the carers allowance when she reaches 60, 62 now, reach pension age, it stops because you can't have both, which is totally unfair. When I started the Carers Support Group, I then also joined, as it was then, Carers National Association, and it has since changed now to Carers UK. And in those days, the word carer wasn't really used very much. I mean, now, because of Carers UK, because of the chairperson that we had, she campaigned so much and in government that we actually got the NHS, the Carers Act in 2004, which meant that any carer could have an assessment in their own right, but as long as the cared for wanted them to have one. So we challenged that right from day one because it was discriminating against the carer, because they still should have a right to have an assessment. So in 2008, 2010, they changed the Act that anyone over the age of 18, because children under the age of 18 come under the Children's Act, would have an assessment in their own right, whether or not the person they were looking after agreed to it or not, and if the person they were looking after didn't have access to social services anyway. Carer friendly since I've been involved. So I've been a carers champion all the years through the 90s, really championing and banging on at them. And And in 1999, when the government launched the first strategy, we had over 100 carers on a particular day at the Guildhall to have a meeting to chat to them and say, what do you actually need as carers? And we had carers right across the age ranges. What they wanted was somewhere local that they could go to, like a one-stop shop really, because you get passed from pillar to post, just like when you ring British Gas men. And so we campaigned, and we've got an office in an old day centre. It literally was one office with 3 people. Through the years, we've now got a carer centre in Orchard Road in Portsmouth that employs nearly 30 staff. So in Portsmouth, we are lucky. They are based themselves in GP surgeries. They're also at QA Hospital to try and pick up carers at the point of contact. So anyone in Portsmouth that looks after somebody, the carer has to live in Portsmouth to have an assessment. But they can have an assessment, they can go to the carer centre, they can have an assessment, they can have a cup of tea, they can have a TLC, they can have tea and cake and biscuits and somebody to show them to try on. They can also get a lot of benefits. They can get access to sit-in service, they can get access to training, moving and handling, finances, legal things as well. But there's still a lot many carers out there. The government estimation is that there's 1 in 5 of the population is a carer. That means in Portsmouth we've probably got about 20,000 carers, a rough estimate. And at the carer centre they've probably got about 5,000 to 6,000 people registered, and that includes young carers as well. And my colleagues at the back who work at the Alzheimer's Society, because a lot of the carers that we work with are looking after somebody with Alzheimer's. And as a social worker, I wear 2 hats. I'm looking after the person and I'm also supporting the carer. And sometimes it can be a conflict of interests, you know, so I hear when you said they'll agree to it. Yes, we have that all the time. I absolutely love my job with a passion, but because of all this new Care Act and because of all this finances, I retire next week. I do not want to face what's coming on. People might say it's the chicken's way out, but I have been through so many changes. I've also been a carer on and off since 2001 when my husband had major surgery and lots of ups and downs along the way. So I know what it's like to challenge GPs. I know what it's like to challenge consultants and they try to dismiss families. I've also been a representative going up to QA when families have said, I'm really not well enough for my mother, father, husband, wife to come home, but they're going to discharge them. And I've actually said, well, you can actually say, I'm not having them home. And no carers know that. Nobody tells them that. It is getting better. I say, over the years, carers are a lot more in the publicity now. You see them in carers magazines, you know, all the magazines in the press and everything. And now, the MPs challenging for the election are all mentioning carers, which in the past has never been mentioned before. And on the census, each census from 2001, it did actually say, are you looking after somebody in your household? That's the first time that carers have ever been mentioned. We also have a survey that we can fill in to say, in our job, are we also looking after someone? We do actually have a carer staff support group as well within the City Council. And as Paul and I were talking earlier on, services across the country, it is still a postcode lottery. When I've been to the Carers AGM in London and I hear carers from other areas that have nothing, and I'm told there's a year's waiting list to have a carers assessment, it is so not right. All carers can actually say to ask the council that they want an assessment, and it is actually the law that the local authorities are not allowed to refuse somebody. You might have to fight for it. But many carers, and girls at the back will agree that if a carer's been told no, they turn around and walk away. Because if a professional said no to them, they probably haven't got the ability, the strength or the willpower to go back and challenge it. But with the likes of us and all the dementia champions and the care support, people will challenge all the decisions for you. With all the finances, everything that Brian said, I can reiterate, as a social worker, it's horrendous having to do exactly what the social worker said to them. We can't afford the care home that your loved one's in. And I have to go back and beg and plead for money from my managers, and we have to justify why we're asking for that. And again, because we can keep people at home and pay agency carers to support somebody at home, it is usually just people with advanced dementia that sadly do go into home at the end. If they start wandering at night, we have all the telecare equipment to try and keep people safe. But also, if the carer's health breaks down, and that very, very often happens, we've had carers pass away and their loved one, and you're saying how many years do they live at a nursing home. I have clients that are 100, 102, and their loved ones passed away beforehand because of the stress of caring. And where Brian mentioned about the NHS, the Continuing Care Act, that is actually a horrendous piece of work to do. And I, like all of you here, if your loved one went into a care home, why shouldn't the government pay for our loved ones? It is a really difficult process, and I can tell you from experience that I have to do it, that people that get continuing health care are usually those that are terminally ill with a life expectancy of say up to 3 or 4 weeks, where a medical person has said this person is terminally ill, end of life palliative care. You automatically get fast tracked continuing care, and that is usually a health decision, not a social work decision. Usually the people that do get continuing care at the moment, if they're not terminally ill, are people usually with advanced dementia with very strong behavioural issues. So I understand when people have got advanced dementia and the families will say that they don't recognise me, they can't do anything, staff do everything for them, they're not likely to get continuing health care. It is the people that are aggressive, unpredictable in their behaviour, that every time staff maybe go to try and help them to toilet or to feed them, they're aggressive, they knock things out. It is the unpredictability of aggressive behaviour. And people with dementia sometimes aren't understood. If you've got unqualified staff that don't arrange or haven't got the best way of speaking to people or approaching them, that's when people get continuing health care. So I fully understand. I would say probably only 1 in 10 of the people that we assess for continuing care actually get it. And it is usually the advanced dementia with a very aggressive behaviour, because it's the unpredictability and the nature of their disability that makes it a healthcare thing. And that's why with Brian, when he said about the RNC, I know that most of the homes in the city now don't accept social services rates, and the nursing home at the moment is less than the national average that Portsmouth City Council pays. So whenever you go to look for a home for your family, loved one, whoever, in the city, if you go to Hampshire, it's even going to be higher. So I've just had a lady move her family mother to a home in Waterlooville, and I've had to beg the city council. What is sad is when people have been paying all their care, all their money, their home's gone, all their savings have gone, after 4 or 5 years, whatever, they come to us and then say, can you help us to support you to fund, and we can't pay the top up, and family can't do it. Some homeowners will accept social services rates. Some will actually evict people. We have had a couple of homes in the city that once a person had had 150 grand off them in care over the last 3 or 4 years, I've actually given them 4 weeks notice.